Hey guys, I'm Ivory. I know I look incomplete right now. That's gonna change in a second, just hold on. Today I'm gonna be doing a 2-day wear test on the Colourpop Pretty Fresh Hyaluronic Hydrating Foundation. I'm gonna be showing you how it applies initially, as well as checking in throughout the day to show you how it wears. For anyone that's new, I have oily and acne prone skin, so my wear tests are catered towards people with similar skin types. And if you find that this review is helpful, I will link up in the cards a playlist of all the other foundations that I have done a review on. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I try to post new videos every single week, and also be sure to follow me on my social media. Everything is _ivorycherry. All right, so before I get started, I do want to break down each of the days because I don't do the same thing on day 1 and day 2. If you're already familiar with this format, then somewhere on the screen I will put a timestamp and you can just skip right to it and it'll go straight into the review. But essentially day 1, half my face I'm going to be using a primer, the other side I do nothing. It just goes onto my bare skin. And in addition to that, on one side I'm going to be using a brush, and then the other side I'm going to be using a sponge just to see how it applies with two very common applicators. And then depending on what works best for that foundation, I will take that information and apply it to day 2. And then essentially day 2 is going to be applying what worked on day 1. But in addition to that, I'm going to be applying loose powder underneath the foundation. That is a tip that I've learned to help prolong oils from coming through. So I'll be adding powder, but I will also be showing you what the foundation looks like in natural lighting, just so that you can get a more realistic opinion about how it's actually going to look on your skin. And I think that's basically it. I think that's the fastest I've ever explained that. So let's actually talk about the foundation. So this is what the foundation will look like. It's not glass, it's plastic. It has a pump, which is great. I did have to shade match online, so I feel like I did a good job, but you guys know me with online shopping for foundation. It is not a power that I have really unlocked, so here's hoping. I'm gonna first prime half my face. I'm using the L'Oreal Infallible Matte Lock Primer, and this is a really liquidy consistency. You don't need a lot. I was actually watching this makeup artist. His name is Robert Welsh, and he was talking about how a lot of people don't look for the right primers for them, and that if you have oily skin, you should be using a more liquidy foundation, and then people with drier skin should be using more of balm-like consistencies for our primers. He didn't really go into the reason why, but I thought that was interesting because a lot of my thicker primers, I don't really see a difference, but I say I see a difference with this primer, and this is the super liquidy one. So it makes me wonder if I've just been looking for the wrong primers all my life. So after I'm done with all my primers, maybe I'll look for more with like this type of consistency. Maybe that's what I've been doing wrong all my life, which makes me feel really good. All right, so on this side of my face, I'm gonna go ahead and use a brush. I'm using the Sigma Round Kabuki, which is the F82, and I'm gonna shake this up, and I'm gonna do only 2 pumps, and I'll see how far that gets me. What I've learned in the past about hydrating foundations, especially for oily skin, is the less product you use, the better. Don't do more than 2 coats, 4 pumps total, because what I've learned is every single time I try to add more coverage past that point, it really does affect the wear time. So less is better with hydrating foundations, and it's way better to work in thin layers and add it up versus fewer layers but really heavy layers. And then on the other side, I'm gonna go ahead and use a microfiber sponge. The Pretty Fresh Hydrating Foundation is a medium buildable coverage for natural, healthy looking skin. It's ideal for all skin types. It has hyaluronic acid, which is known to hydrate and support healthy looking skin, and it also contains coconut water, which is known to support hydration and skin softness. It's dermatologist tested, it's oil free, it's vegan, it contains 1 fluid ounce, and retails for $16. All right, so immediately I can tell the sponge side, way better coverage. I felt like this was my bad side, which is why I use my sponge, because usually I get better coverage with this one. And the fact that this is my bad side and the coverage is better on one layer versus the good side, and I can still see like every imperfection, tells me that if you want more coverage with this one, go with a sponge. But this side looks pretty nice too. I will say the 2 pumps that I use, I still have quite a bit. I use the 2 pumps for both the sponge and the brush. So I'm thinking I'm gonna get pretty good coverage for very little product, which is awesome because $16, it's not crazy expensive, but it's a little high up there in the affordable range. I'm gonna go ahead and apply my second coat of foundation. Can we also just appreciate that I finally got my foundation shade? It's a little dark, but when I set it, I know it's gonna be like the perfect shade. But I think I finally unlocked the power of actually shade matching myself correctly online. This type of power, it's only bestowed upon the chosen ones. I'm so freaking excited. I'm gonna put it on my resume. They're gonna be like, she doesn't really have any qualifications for this job, but in her skill, she says that she can correctly shade match online. And that's pretty impressive. Hired. All right, so I added my second layer. I actually still have leftover foundation. I'm not gonna add a third coat. I'm pretty happy with the coverage. The description of this foundation was medium buildable. I would agree to that. And the fact that I was able to achieve this with just the 2 pumps is pretty great. I do want to comment on something because it's never happened to me before, but my skin, it feels really itchy. I'm thinking it's the coconut water because I've never had a foundation or any product have coconut water. It's not just my nose. I don't know why whenever I add foundation on my face, my nose immediately gets itchy, but I feel a weird itchiness throughout the rest of my face as well. I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of my face. Someone in a past wear test video that I did commented that they didn't feel my review was complete or as thorough because I didn't show the rest of my face on camera. I do list all of my products in my description box, but for the most part, I leave it out when I do multiple days of wear tests because I don't want the video to be super long, but at the same time, I can understand why a person may want me to leave that part in. So I want to cater to everyone, so you can skip this part if you don't really care about seeing the rest of my face, but for this video, I'm gonna leave it in just so that you can see what I do with the rest of my face. I do the same thing every single time, so maybe that's why I think it's boring, but I'm just gonna leave it in today. Alright, so this is what everything looks like all done. Now that the rest of my face is on, I don't feel itchy anymore. I hope I don't break out. On our first impressions, I like this foundation. I like the finish. It's not overly shiny, not like greasy hydrating. It is very natural, very subtle, almost like if you took your foundation and mixed it in with a little bit of moisturizer. The coverage, I would agree, as it claims, it is a medium buildable coverage. But that is it for now. I will check in a little bit to show you what it's looking like. So see you in a couple hours. Alright, it is the 5-hour mark and my oils have come through a little bit. I actually prefer the finish of this now that my oils have come through and mixed in with the foundation a little bit. I think it looks really healthy. It's not overly greasy or shiny. It just looks so pretty. Comparing the primer side versus no primer, I feel like this side is just a tiny bit less shiny. It's hard to see overall. There are certain areas where I can really see it. For me, the easiest tell is the cheek area. This side looks like a satin matte to me, whereas this side, it almost looks like the blush that I used. Even though it's the same blush, it kind of looks like a shiny blush, which I didn't. I used the matte blush. So this area is usually my giveaway. And speaking of giveaway, there is no giveaway. I'm sorry, I got you excited. All right, so getting up close, you can see right here, my smile line, it's starting to barely show. Smile line and this forehead wrinkle are always my biggest tell on how I like a foundation. As you can see, 5 hours in, the line is so faint, and pretty much the same situation right here in my forehead wrinkle. It really isn't too bad. On my nose, you know, there's no funky business happening, I don't think. It's not overly shiny at this point. Nothing is separating, and I can pretty much say the same thing right here in my T-zone. It looks about as good as it normally is with foundation on top of it. And on my chin area, this is where I have most of my acne, I would say, at this moment. I feel like the coverage has remained the same and it's not clinging in weird areas. So far, oh, and the itchiness that I had before when I first applied this, I just want to say, it stopped being itchy after I put on my entire face. And since then, it still isn't itchy. So it just seemed like an initial reaction, but it went away. So that is it for now. So I will check in 5 more hours. All right, we have reached the 10-hour mark. More of my oils have come through. And at this point, I would want to blot, and I will in a second. Before we do though, let's get in a little closer. So at the 5-hour mark, I could see it starting to settle in my smile line. It looks nearly the same, I would say. Maybe it's a little bit worse, but not by much. Just a side note to anyone that's new, foundation always sinks in the smile line as well as my forehead wrinkle. It's just a matter of how much it settles in there. So this situation is very normal for me. It's just that really bad foundations, it starts settling right away, or it's really prominent. In this case, it's faint, it's not that deep, it's barely noticeable. So for me, that's good. Same thing up here on my forehead wrinkle. Actually, where did it go? Did it disappear? Maybe it's because this is so shiny, so it's deflecting. I feel like the forehead wrinkle looks a little bit better, but as a trade-off of the forehead wrinkle getting better, I am also now more oily. In my T-zone, nothing is really broken up. Everything is still holding together really nicely. Same thing on my nose. Everything is staying together. A lot of the times on either the tip of my nose as well as the sides, the foundation will start to break apart, and that's not happening at this point. I think the area where there is a little bit more noticeable wear is my chin. It's starting to crack a little bit, but it's not separating, it's just cracking a little bit. It's not really noticeable unless I'm looking really up close for it, but I did want to make note of that. It's happening, but it's not worrisome. I'm gonna go ahead and blot half my face so that we can get a side-by-side comparison. The blotting sheets that I use are from Amazon. They're not my favorite ones, so I'm actually gonna link the ones that I prefer in my description box below. All right, so this side of my face is blotted. From a close distance in between me and you is a mirror that I'm looking at. I don't feel like blotting has ruined the foundation at all. It looks totally fine. I just look less shiny. But when you get up close, there are a little bit of imperfections. You can see right here at the tip of my nose, I lost a little bit of coverage. So on my nose, there are a couple patches of the foundation missing. And same thing on my chin, there's just a little bit of foundation missing. Because it is a good shade match, it's hard to tell what is my skin and what is foundation, but I know the difference. And I can definitely tell that there are some areas that lost a little bit of coverage, but it really isn't that bad. I'm having the same issue around my forehead. Just a little bit of coverage has been lost in really random areas around the perimeter of my forehead. But like, if I didn't point that out, could you even tell? I don't think so. So this is me just being nitpicky, just so that you guys have all the information. But I'm telling you right now, the mirror that I'm looking at is about a foot, maybe a foot and a half away from me right now. I can't see all the imperfections I just picked out unless I'm super close and looking for it. And at this point in time, everyone should be at least 6 feet away from you. So no one's gonna be seeing that. I'm gonna save like my final thoughts for the end of this video. That way it doesn't get too repetitive where I'm saying the same thing over and over. But what I've learned from today that I'm gonna apply to day 2, if you want more coverage, a sponge, specifically a microfiber sponge, is the way to go. But if you wanted a more sheer, wearable, everyday foundation, then it would work just fine with a brush. I think both applicators gave me a medium coverage, but the brush gave me a medium coverage, like solid medium, whereas the sponge gave me a medium full. Oh my god, I totally forgot to check which side was more matte, if it was the side with primer or without. I'm so sorry, that is my fault. But what I'll do is I'll go back into my footage when I'm editing this and I'll look at what my face looked like before I blotted so I can compare the sides. And then depending on what I see, I'll take that information and I will inform you on day 2. That is it for day 1. Good night. Good morning, it is day 2. I have switched to my beauty setup because I kind of need to get ready fast. Not in my last video, but the video before it. I talked about how I am fostering currently and Cookie is still in the house. Got a lot of energy in the morning. Steve said that he can hold the fort down for a little bit, but he does have to go back to work. So I don't want to take super long, which is why I didn't want to take all my makeup and bring it downstairs. It's a whole thing. This is not the natural light portion. I do have my vanity lights coming at me, but the next check-in after this one is going to be the one where I show you what the makeup looks like in natural lighting. So I went back on my footage to see if primer made a difference, and I did think it made a little bit of a difference. You could probably get away with not using primer. You don't have to, but I saw a little bit of a difference. By no means did it make it worse, so I don't think it hurts in this case to have primer on. So I'm gonna go ahead and use the same primer that I did yesterday. I'm just gonna apply that to the areas where I'm the most oily, and then right on top of it, I'm going in with the Dermablend Loose Setting Powder, and I'm gonna apply this underneath my foundation, and I like to focus this on the area that I get the oiliest, so my nose. It always seems to break up around this area. It really doesn't have to go all over the face. You can if you want. Sometimes I do that too. It really depends my mood. But the center of my face is where I get the oiliest, so I know to make sure at least at the minimum those areas are covered in powder, and then the rest is just optional. And I really don't have a special reasoning as to when I'm gonna powder the rest of my face or not. It's just like when the cashier asks you if you want the receipt in the bag or in your hand. My answer is different every single time, and I have no algorithm as to what I'm gonna choose until it just comes out of my mouth. And then with the foundation, I am gonna use the microfiber sponge again since I liked that coverage better. And I'm only going in with 1 pump since I had foundation left over last time. So let's start with 1 and see what happens. Okay, so this is the first layer and I used up, I would say like 90% of the foundation. I am getting that itchy feeling again and my whole face is tingly. I forgot to mention, because I didn't film the first day yesterday, this is quite a few days apart actually, but after I wore this foundation, the next day I broke out. I don't know if it was because of the foundation or because I used a new makeup remover. It was the one by Patrick Star. It was the makeup remover mist, but today I am not going to be using that makeup remover. I'm going to use what I already currently use to see what happens, but I'm getting that itchy feeling again. I'm gonna go in with a second layer. I'm only gonna use like half a pump. That really wasn't half a pump, that was more like a quarter of a pump, but I'm just gonna add it to a couple areas where I feel like it could use a little bit more coverage. All right, so this is 2 layers of foundation and I used in total less than 1.5 pumps. I don't think I need to get up close right now because it looks pretty much the same as it did initially on the first day, but there is no noticeable difference with powder underneath, and having the powder underneath didn't make it harder to blend or anything. Sometimes that happens too, but that happens more so with super dry matte foundations, so I didn't really expect it to be harder to blend. But I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of my base. It's the same thing that I did on the first day. All the products are exactly the same. I'm gonna do the rest of my makeup really quickly because I don't want Steve to be super stressed about having to work and take care of the dog. So I figured since I am doing the exact same thing as I did on day one with the rest of my base, I think you can agree that there's no need to show it twice. So I think that I'm done with this check-in. So the next time that you see me will be the halfway point, and that's going to be in natural lighting. So until then. All right, we are 5 hours in. On day two, I think my makeup is wearing really nicely. I do feel as though today I look a little bit more matte at the 5 hour mark than I did on day one. I'll have to look back at the footage. Maybe I'll be able to do a comparison right here. But looking at my face, sorry, Cookie just woke up from a nap, so he's got a lot of energy. Boy, you have white fur. My foundation will rub all over you and everyone's gonna see it. But I'm thinking that the powder actually does do something because I don't feel like I look as shiny as it did day one. On my cheeks, you can see pretty much everything looks the same. In the center of my face, which is my more problematic areas, the foundation in between my eyebrows is settling just a little bit, but it's a little bit hard to tell. I'm really looking for it. My nose is looking really good. And same thing on my chin. There's not much to update. It looks more or less the same. So just this area is a little bit iffy, but it's almost like everywhere else is an A+, and then this one area is like an A-. So it's still good. It's just in comparison to everything else, it's not as good. So I think that's it for this update. So I will see you at the end of the day, and I will give you my final thoughts on this foundation. All right, it is the 9.5 hour mark. I figured you would forgive me for the extra half hour because I did 10 hours the first day. If you hear any outside noise, it is the puppy that I'm fostering upstairs. He's just like he's just running on the hardwood. I can hear him. He just had dinner, so I'm just gonna let him tire himself out. My husband is watching him now. Since both sides are using the exact same products, I went ahead and blotted this side just so that you can see a comparison. This is what it looks like when I just touched up versus if I didn't touch up. 9.5 hours of wear. This side isn't really that bad. I would be okay not touching it up, but I feel like an hour or two more, I would definitely be a little bit too shiny for my personal taste. On my nose in this area, you can barely see it, but I did lose just a little bit of coverage. You would have to be really close to me to see it. The coverage that I lost from blotting is really insignificant, which tells me that if you wore this for over 10 hours and you wanted to touch up, you're not gonna get patches of missing foundation. You could actually touch up and kind of reset it a little bit and continue wearing it, which I think is great. As far as the side that I did not blot, I think it held together pretty well. There is some wear and tear on my chin area as well as my T-zone. That was kind of already happening. 5 hour mark. It hasn't really gotten worse. It's gotten a little bit shinier. So you just could blot that and problem would be solved. I'm actually just gonna do that right now because I love blotting. It just makes the foundation feel so much lighter. I don't know if you'll be able to see, but right here and a little bit of the side of my nose as well as the crevice, I did lose a little bit of coverage. And same thing over here actually. Most of my acne is currently residing right here, and specifically on this side. You can see on this side there's way less acne. So there's already lots of texture here, and by blotting it, I did lose a little bit of coverage. So definitely not perfect, but as a whole, I would say it's pretty good. I mean, if it were me and I was going out and I had to blot, I would still feel comfortable blotting, knowing what I currently know, that I might lose a little bit of foundation here and there, but it's not super noticeable. As far as having powder underneath, did it help? Did it not? I felt like the halfway point today versus day one, I felt as though I was less matte today, but at the end of the day, I mean, the difference wasn't huge. I probably would be okay either way, with or without powdering underneath, but having that powder underneath in no way decreased the wear time of this foundation or the quality or anything like that. With any foundation though, I suggest that you do a couple of trial and errors to see what works best for you. That's why I do multiple days. So see if maybe it's your primer. Try half primer, half no primer, and see if the wear time changes. You could try a bunch of different setting powders, both either underneath your foundation or over your foundation, and after a couple of trials, you still feel like the foundation is not working for you, then you throw it out or you return it, either of those. So let's talk about the pros and the cons of this foundation. Should I start with the cons? Let's start with cons. What I didn't like was the itchiness. I'll definitely have to update you guys either in the comments or something, but I definitely had an itching sensation on both days. I felt like the 10 hour mark on day one, I was just a little bit greasier than I would like. Overall, when you blot, the foundation isn't too disturbed, but if you're a person that doesn't blot, just know that at the 10 hour mark, you might be a little bit shinier than you would like. What I do like about this foundation is it's very buildable. The formula itself is a little bit runnier, so you could definitely make this super sheer, but it's very easy to build up. But for me, it's a solid medium, and the fact that I was able to get it in 1.5 pumps, I think is wonderful. The price isn't, you know, crazy, but $16 is, it's a little bit high up there. I don't know, I'm frugal, so anything over like $11 is kind of expensive to me. Is it my new favorite foundation? No, it's a pretty good one. It didn't really settle in my creases, which I really appreciated. It lasted up to 10 hours on me. So with all that being said, I do recommend this foundation. As of lately, I've really been into more hydrating, luminous, dewy, natural looking foundations. A lot of the times those types of finishes aren't really compatible for people with oily skin, but I think this one is. And because hydrating foundations can be a little bit tricky for us, I would recommend the tips that I have, sprinkled throughout this video. But that is it for this review. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and feel free to comment down below what foundation I should try next. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye. Try different setting powers. Try a bunch of different setting powders. Oh my god, not powers. Oh my god, what? I'm saying the same thing over and over again, so now I don't even know what the fuck I'm supposed to say. I'm busy. Move. Just when I'm about to start the check-in, of course he would cry. Hello, can I help you?